Well, as we saw in this past election, sadly, we ain't ready. That's why I'm like, don't even look at me about running, because you all are lying. You're not ready for a woman. You are not. So don't waste my time.
Of all the ways America continues to divide itself, nowhere is it more pronounced than in gender. And until the Democrats come to grips with that, they won't have much success winning elections. Let's just put it out there. Women are the Democrats' base, and men who get hit in the head for a living are Trump.
Bill Maher's latest criticism of Michelle Obama has sparked intense reactions. After the former First Lady shared her concerns about gender inequality in the United States, the Real-Time host responded with a sharp counterattack. Michelle Obama's bold comments quickly drew national attention, and Maher didn't stop at disagreeing. He challenged her claims and pointed out what he believed was a major imbalance in her argument. Get ready, everyone. Things are heating up fast.
Bro party, the party of car shows on the White House lawn and breaking, seeing what happens and busting balls and shooting stuff like beer and laws. Oh, yeah. It's been that way for a long time. The mommy party and the daddy party. The party of pussy hats and the party of truck nuts.
Maher begins by pointing out the growing divide between men and women in American politics, warning that this trend deserves serious attention. He argues that real progress is impossible when one gender strongly supports one political side while the other heads in a completely different direction, creating even deeper division. Maher doesn't soften his message and stresses that this situation is nothing to celebrate, but this is only the start of his critique. What truly fuels his passion are the talking points repeated by the political left and echoed by Michelle Obama, suggesting that presidential elections in the United States naturally favor men. Maher strongly rejects this idea, calling it misleading and harmful because it adds to tension while ignoring important realities. From the very beginning of his segment, he delivers a bold and unapologetic response that makes his stance unmistakably clear.
I mean, her statement, I was rather shocked by it.
Yeah.
She said, as we saw in the past election, sadly, we ain't ready. Okay, to me, this is logical fallacy 101. Just because we weren't ready or didn't like the candidates, Hillary and Kamala, doesn't mean we're not ready for a woman. Maybe. I think it's a bad attitude. I do. I mean, we said we weren't ready for a black president, and someone, I can't remember who, maybe she remembers.
Maher challenges Michelle Obama's argument by pointing out what he sees as clear flaws in her reasoning. He insists that the losses of Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton do not prove that Americans are unwilling to elect a woman as president. Instead, he says these results simply reflect how unpopular those particular candidates were with voters. According to Maher, gender does not determine how Americans vote. They choose leaders who understand their struggles, address their concerns, and offer real solutions. He argues that labeling election outcomes as sexist is both lazy and disrespectful to voters. Society is not rejecting women, he says. It is rejecting policies, personalities, and messages that fail to connect. Pretending otherwise only fuels frustration and ignores what people actually want.
We're long, so as you mentioned, to save time.
Yes.
You know, I know having a glam team, a trifecta, it feels like a luxury, you know, because rare is the woman that can live off the rack.
No one can live off the rack. I'm sorry, but you have to subject yourself.
Michelle Obama often portrays herself as a champion of women's empowerment, yet many of her interviews center on her own struggles in the public eye, something critics say can overshadow her broader political message. Maher points out what he sees as a surprising contradiction. She argues that women are fully capable of leading the nation, yet she repeatedly emphasizes how difficult it is to handle even basic public expectations. According to Maher, these stories, while they may be genuine, end up weakening the very message she intends to promote. To him, it feels less like true empowerment and more like polished political performance when someone in her position warns the country about the supposed fear of female leadership.
How rich have they become since they left office? I mean, this is the deal,
Hundreds
right?
of millions.
They serve their country on a not insignificant sum of money. I think it's about $400,000 a year the president gets. And they live in unparalleled luxury the entire time they're in office. And when they leave, they make hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. Has anyone got a tiny violin for me
Yes.
that I can start playing here?
Yes. And
ridiculous.
Not for nothing, but did you see that hideous outfit she was wearing? I've just never met somebody so ungrateful in all my life. And what did she start it off with? People said I was hateful. Because you are. She can't stand America. She definitely can't stand Barack. And I don't think she likes herself very much either.
Megyn Kelly cuts straight to the core of the issue as she explains why voters didn't rally behind Kamala Harris and why she believes Michelle Obama wouldn't receive that support either. Her perspective is direct and leaves little room for confusion.
Let me explain something to white people. Our hair comes out of our head naturally in a curly pattern. So when we're straightening it to follow your beauty standards, we are trapped by the straightness. That's why so many of us can't swim and we run away from the water. People won't go to the gym because we're trying to keep our hair straight for y'all. Braids are for y'all so we can work harder and focus on the work. So why do we need an act? An act of law to tell white folks to get out of our hair.
Kelly argues that both women represent the hyper-woke political culture many Americans have grown weary of. Instead of focusing on the problems that truly shape daily life, like the economy, safety, stability, and national strength, she says they often get caught up in symbolic debates and issues that feel minor to most people. According to Kelly, this constant focus on identity politics erodes trust and pushes away voters who want practical leadership rather than lectures. She also highlights what many find surprising. Both women have achieved great success in America while continuing to criticize it, a contradiction that feels unrealistic to many. Their lack of support, Kelly insists, isn't about sexism. It's about their goals, their messaging, and their disconnect from what voters are actually concerned about.
Well, as we saw in this past election, sadly, we ain't ready. That's why I'm like, don't even look at me about running, because you all are lying. You're not ready for a woman. You are not. So don't waste my time. You know, we got a lot of growing up to do. And there's still, sadly, a lot of men who do not feel like they can be led by a woman, and we saw it. I think we still have growing to do.
I shared this video because it shows how Michelle Obama's continued focus on racial identity has become a major reason, according to critics, for her declining popularity among many Americans. Her detractors argue that she often places racial topics above broader political concerns, and they believe her repeated use of racial framing in speeches can start to feel repetitive and overly emphasized. They also point out that this approach seems to clash with the long-standing liberal idea that true equality comes from rising above racial labels. Yet in their view, Michelle does the opposite. She places race at the center of nearly every story, frustration, or political point she raises. This is exactly why her critics label her as woke, saying that such politics don't remove racial divisions, but instead become preoccupied with them.
Someone must tell the usual suspects on the far left that the saying is, when you're in a hole, stop digging, not keep digging. Talk about doubling down on what got you in the first place. Even the one concession I've heard a few people on the losing side offer, that liberals should stop saying the Trump voters are stupid, comes with a kind of unspoken parentheses. We know they are stupid, just don't say.
Many critics challenge Michelle's claim by arguing that the real issue isn't Americans needing to catch up, but rather their expectation that candidates meet real-world standards. Simply being a woman doesn't guarantee voter support. People vote for ideas, competence, and policies that truly move the country forward, something Michelle often overlooks. Voters don't reward candidates for fitting a certain label. They look for leaders who understand their struggles and offer practical answers. Support for Kamala Harris, for example, might have been much stronger if she had stepped away from overly ideological themes and focused on what truly matters to families: jobs, stability, affordability, safety, and the economy. Instead, she repeated political slogans that felt out of touch, leading to her lack of voter support. This wasn't due to a fear of women, but a desire for meaningful leadership. Gender doesn't determine election outcomes. Strong direction does. Maher believes this is the message Michelle and the Democratic Party are being confronted with.
You wear Queers for Palestine t-shirts and masks 2 years after the pandemic ended. And you can't define woman, I mean person who menstruates. You're the teachers union education party, and you've turned schools and colleges into a joke. You just lost a crazy contest to an actual crazy person.
Maher argues that comments like Michelle Obama's frustrate voters and may have contributed to the Democratic Party's recent setbacks. He believes that by clinging to divisive ideologies instead of focusing on the issues people truly care about, Democrats keep undermining themselves. Party leaders, he says, seem determined to repeat the same mistakes rather than reflect on losses and adjust their strategy. Michelle Obama's increasing use of this kind of rhetoric is a prime example. Voters don't see her remarks as insightful. Instead, they view them as a sign of the party's unwillingness to learn from past errors. By relying on identity-driven talking points, Democrats risk alienating people instead of addressing critical concerns like the economy, border security, affordability, and other issues affecting everyday families. According to Maher, these losses will continue unless the party shifts its focus, and Michelle's comments only make the problem worse.
You love to speak truth to power, and we always should, but you have completely lost the ability to speak truth to both. The Democratic polling firm Blueprint told Democrats months ago that black voters, aka their supposedly liberal base, were more likely to find the president too liberal than too conservative. They also found that voters didn't just want Harris to distance herself from Biden, they wanted her to distance herself from what they believe the entire Democratic Party has become, a Portlandia sketch.
Maher argues that Kamala Harris's political message mattered far more than her gender, which explains the challenges she faced. Americans accepted her as a woman, but her policies led to rejection. He claims that voters had grown frustrated with the Democratic Party's leftist agenda, which often felt disconnected from the issues people care about most. Many were turned off by the party's persistent focus on identity politics, ideological messaging, and controversial stances on foreign conflicts, which critics say sometimes favored extremists over real victims. Maher also points to cultural policies promoted by the left, especially those affecting children and highly progressive social initiatives that many Americans feel have gone too far. He emphasizes that voters were neither naive nor confused. They simply didn't want to continue ideological experiments for another 4 years. The rejection had nothing to do with sexism. It was about trust, values, and priorities. Observers note that the Democratic Party's increasingly rigid rhetoric has even frustrated many black voters. While they continue to support the party broadly, they no longer feel it truly represents their values. Many see the party that once championed economic opportunity, community safety, and practical progress replaced by one focused on social lectures, symbols, and niche cultural disputes. This frustration, they say, is only growing. For this reason, Michelle Obama's claim that gender bias explains the lack of support for female candidates is mistaken. Voters aren't rejecting candidates because of their gender. They are rejecting those whose policies feel unrealistic or out of touch with real-world concerns. That wraps up today's video. For more content like this, please hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.